the future of manufacturing technology, the Big Gemma Pullback in AI, and big tech monopolies in enterprise technology. Those are just a few of the topics we'll cover here in episode 247 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ground control is a major song.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 247. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And this is the tech-agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation, including the people, process, technology, and strategy sides of change without all the sales spin. This is the realistic view of what to expect in digital transformation. And our hope is that by listening to and watching this podcast, you will educate yourself and be more prepared and better equipped to handle your digital transformation initiatives. So we've got a great show planned for you today. We've got a lot of topics we're going to cover. We've got some noteworthy, newsworthy topics we're going to get to here to start the conversation. And then we're going to get into specifically within those newsworthy topics, we'll talk about the Big Gemma Pullback. We'll talk about AWS's CEO and his thoughts around AI agents and the $40 billion they're investing in Asia Pacific for next-gen innovation. And that should be a great conversation. And then later in the show, we will have the CEO of QAD Software on the show. His name is Sanjay. I'll call him Sanjay B because I tend to butcher his last name, but his name is Sanjay. He's the CEO of QAD Software. QAD Software, if you aren't familiar, is a software provider for the manufacturing space primarily. We're going to be on the show, or he's going to be on the show talking about the future of manufacturing tech beyond ERP. And then later in the show, after Sanjay joins us, we're also going to talk about big tech monopolies in the enterprise technology space and what that means for you as a potential buyer of technology. So lots to cover here today, and excited to unpack much of this with you here today. So first of all, to get into some of our newsworthy topics, I'm going to start with this Amazon Web Services, Amazon comment from AWS's CEO, Matt Garman. And he's recently came out and talked about or made a bold announcement about a major shift in how enterprise cloud, AI agents, and global infrastructure will converge. And so what's really interesting is that Matt, who's the CEO of AWS, is coming out and saying that AI agents will be core to the next wave of innovation, which I think a lot of us knew that or suspect that, and that's been a big topic of conversation on this podcast. But what's interesting is seeing and following the money here and what exactly they're doing to invest in and prove that this is what they think is going to happen as well. And in light of that, or to reflect that, AFS is committing over $40 billion through 2028 just to expand its cloud and AI infrastructure across 14 Asia Pacific economies, which is super interesting. That's a lot of money being spent on AI infrastructure. And the strategy is really combining large scale data center investment with AI, agentic AI, and local and regional data sovereignty consideration. So there's a lot of investment they're making, and it sounds like they're not just making these big investments, but they're also trying to figure out a way to satisfy the need for localization of some of these big AI centers, but also leveraging the other capabilities at scale. So some of the key takeaways from this announcement and this direction that AWS is taking is that AI agents are becoming mainstream. And the CEO of AWS talked about and emphasized how tools will act on behalf of customers rather than just responding, and how this is central to enterprise innovations. He also talked about how infrastructure scale matters. The $40 billion they're investing in the Asia Pacific region tells us that AWS seems to think that Asia Pacific region will be a major growth engine for AI and cloud. And then data sovereignty and region-specific strategies are embedded in the plan. And this is a big part of what they've announced as well in controlling or having regional control over some of these data flows. And this isn't just about U.S. markets or legacy cloud models. It's about global expansion, new architectures that combine agents with cloud and data, and changing what innovation looks like in enterprise technology. So a lot of interesting stuff that AWS is making in terms of its investments and its overall strategy. So, it does raise a lot of questions that I want to ask the audience. I'm curious to hear your feedback on this because I do not have the answers to these questions, but it does spark some conversation or some threads that I'm curious to hear your feedback on. And that is, first of all, how should enterprises govern AI agents that act on their behalf? That's been an ongoing conversation on this show, is how do you merge or integrate human behavior with AI tools? You also have to ask yourselves what architectures will support agents interacting with multiple systems like ERP, CRM, supply chain, et cetera. And that's actually something we'll talk about later in this episode with Sanjay from QAD, because a big part of what their strategy is this whole composable ERP and integration tool set across multiple vendors. So more of a multi-vendor strategy. So I'll be curious to see how that whole composable ERP multi-vendor strategy unfolds or potentially becomes more enabled by AI agents, because I think that is one of the underrated powers or potential powers of AI agents, is that potential integration between systems and that potential flexibility to now have multiple vendors and multiple products that coexist within the same environment, rather than having to put all your eggs in one basket for one specific provider. It also begs the question of, will agentic AI and the cloud backbone become a new platform play, replacing or augmenting traditional ERP and monolithic applications? I tend to think that's probably true, that agentic AI and cloud will become, we'll sort of head more towards a new platform approach rather than an application approach. And platforms are a bit different in that you can not only buy off the shelf pre-built software within that platform, but it opens up the platform to third-party developers to create niche solutions and industry-specific solutions. And in some cases, it also allows customers to custom develop their own products, but do it in a proven platform that's already been developed and already presumably has other applications that you're using that could integrate with whatever custom product you might develop. And this is a really interesting hybrid strategy, because I think a lot of organizations could really benefit from having more of a platform approach where they can get the best of both worlds of having pre-built software, but at the same time preserving their secret sauce or creating their own competitive advantages by creating software that others won't necessarily have access to. So I think that's something to keep an eye on, a trend to keep an eye on. In fact, next week's episode of Transformation Ground Control, episode number 248, we're going to talk about the top 10 enterprise applications for 2026 and beyond. And one of the big trends you'll see in that top 10 ranking is the emergence and the high rankings of some of these different platforms that are available in the marketplace. When it comes to CISOs, the Chief Information Security Officers, we also have to ask, what's the risk when systems may act autonomously in their environment? And the other thing too is, will this investment spur vendor lock-in? So by getting locked into AWS on an even bigger scale, is there risk there? Or does it simply provide a backbone to new composable models that allow you to diversify your risk? So, it might be that we shift our risk from being locked in or having vendor lock with application providers, and now we've got vendor lock with our cloud providers. So that's a bit of a double-edged sword. And especially when you have all this recent news with recent AWS outages that were very impactful and very disruptive to much of the global economy here in the last few weeks, it does beg the question of, do we want to have all our eggs in one big provider basket? And this also ties into a conversation we're going to have later in this episode, where we talk about the big tech monopolies, and Amazon, AWS is one that I allude to and talk about in that conversation here later today, because they are one of the big tech providers, along with, SAP, Microsoft, et cetera, et cetera. Google obviously is one as well. So, we really have to look at, what does this level of scale that AWS is achieving? On one hand, it's providing a very robust, very big solution that can scale with the largest of organizations. But on the other hand, it's creating a potential vendor lock scenario and a vendor dependency scenario that could be problematic longer term. So I suppose the bottom line here with this announcement with AWS is that it's not just another cloud investment headline. It seems to be a deeper pivot that they're making moving or recognizing that enterprise systems are moving from platforms and users towards platforms and autonomous agents and global data fabrics. So organizations charting digital transformations, especially those that are navigating legacy ERP integration or modernization, this means that you have to rethink how you build, govern, and scale your architecture for the agent data, or for the agent era, I should say, which includes your data and how you're going to manage your data in this agent focused era that we're headed towards. So interesting stuff there from AWS, and I'm curious to see how that unfolds. I'm curious to hear your feedback too on what you think that means to the global tech world as well. So shifting gears here, I want to talk about Gemma and how the Gemma pullback at Google is happening because of allegations of AI generated defamation. And this is for the person involved here, this is a deeply personal situation, but it's a good reminder that AI is not perfect, and that there is a dark side to AI, and something that's going to require consistent and ongoing human intervention and interaction in order for it to be truly beneficial to society the way it can be. So the story here is that Google has pulled their Gemma model from public access via its AI Studio platform, following serious accusations of defamation by a United States senator. And this highlights the stakes of generative AI and real-world reputation, governance, and enterprise trust. So just to break this down a little bit more, Google removed Gemma from its AI Studio product after Marsha Blackburn, who's a Republican senator in the United States, in Tennessee, the state of Tennessee to be specific, she accused it of fabricating a non-existent sexual misconduct allegation against her. So you have to wonder, how did it create that allegation? I'm not sure of the details, but the model apparently fabricated details by stating that Marsha Blackburn was accused of having a sexual relationship with a state trooper during her 1987 campaign. She pressured him to obtain prescription drugs as well, according to this false AI readout. And so according to Marsha Blackburn and her representatives, none of this is true. And it was something that was completely created by Gemma. And so Google clarified that Gemini was designed for developer use via API and not for public factual queries. Access via Studio is now suspended to prevent misuse. So I think that's a really interesting point too. So you have to recognize what type of AI model you're using and what you're using it for. And that is a super interesting point, that you use something like a Gemma to conjure up information about a politician or a public figure. That's not what it was built for. It's probably not well trained for it. It probably doesn't have access to the information it should, because it wasn't built for that. It was built to help developers code and create code faster. So I think that's that's the general headline of what's happening here. So some of the takeaways that we can take away from this are that hallucinations are, in some cases, and when I say hallucination, I mean AI hallucinations or inaccuracies, are escalating into liability. So this isn't as simple as, well, the model got it wrong, but now we've got a legal issue here with defamation. We saw something similar, but it's a little bit different, I suppose, because it involved a poor human interaction with AI as well as an AI hallucination. But if you follow the news in the tech world, you may have heard about the issue that Deloitte had with I believe it was the Australian government, and they had created some sort of report that had completely inaccurate and fabricated case studies or court cases in the report. And, shame on the AI model for getting it wrong, but then shame on Deloitte because they had a consultant who used AI to create the report, didn't validate, didn't look at, to validate that the information was accurate, and submitted that as a deliverable to the government. Now the government doesn't want to pay for that deliverable, understandably so. That's just another example. That's not a legal issue yet, at least at the time I'm recording this, not that I know of anyway, but there is a financial implication there, a reputation issue there with Deloitte, and a reputation issue as it relates to AI in general and some of these hallucinations. So I think that's something we need to be mindful of, is different AI tools have different strengths and different ways that they can be used. And they also have different ways that they can be misused if we don't have the human interaction and integration that we need, and the oversight. Just like you wouldn't hire the smartest employee in the world just to go do whatever they want to do, you're going to provide some governance and oversight and direction for that person. Same goes for AI agents and AI use in general. Another thing that this reminds us of is that governance needs to include real world context. So we have to monitor the outputs, make sure that we identify some fail safes for reputational risk. And we just have to be aware that there's some significant legal and financial risk when we have AI tools that get it wrong. So some of the questions that come out of this as a result are, how should organizations classify AI model use cases? In other words, how can and can't people use AI, and how can they apply different guardrails accordingly? And again, these are more not hypothetical, but questions I have, questions that we have, our team has after reviewing this case. And we don't necessarily have the answers, but these are the types of questions you have to ask yourself. And I'm curious to hear your feedback or your comments in the chat below on what you think about this. But that's one question, is classifying and clarifying how AI can or should and can't or shouldn't be used within your organization. We also need to know what frameworks should exist for reputational risk when AI produces output about real individuals. In this case, with Gemma, it wasn't just a general domain misinformation. It was specific, pretty serious allegations that didn't exist against a real person. Whether you like her or not as a politician is a different story. But the key here is that if it can happen to her, it can happen to anyone, really. So we just need to be aware of that. And how do you audit and trace the source of fabricated claims within AI output? And who's accountable? That's another question. For enterprise vendors that are building some AI tools or integrating with these AI tools, how should the model availability decisions be made? Should there be standard contractual language or indemnification when AI models produce allegations about identifiable individuals? And that could be a conversation we have with Marcus Harris, who's been on this podcast several times talking about legal and intellectual property considerations for AI. And I think this is another angle that we could look at it from, is defamation and reputational risk and just general legal issues arising from faulty AI models or AI delusions. We also have to look at how do trust, brand risk, and compliance and governance interplay when AI is publicly exposed versus locked in enterprise controlled workflows. And then also, what are the implications for internal enterprise usage when user-facing AI might output unchecked claims about employees, customers, or partners? So the bottom line here is this isn't just a simple model hallucination or a goof up. The Gemma incident underscores how generative AI is now squarely in the zone of brand risk, legal exposure, and organizational governance. For executives, especially those involved in transformation and tech strategy, the message is pretty clear. You must define where your AI models operate, what use cases they cover, who monitors them, and what fallback or remediation paths are in place. So very important stuff there, of course. So good stuff there. Newsworthy topics are always one of my favorite things to cover because this stuff is changing so fast and there's always new stuff coming out in the world of enterprise tech. I'm curious to hear your feedback and thoughts on the questions we just covered as well. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to speak with Sanjay, who's the CEO of QAD Software. He's going to be with me talking about the future of manufacturing technology and how it is evolving beyond traditional ERP. And then later in the show, we're going to talk about big tech monopolies and what that means to you as a tech buyer and as a digital transformation leader. So be sure to stick around. We've got a lot more to cover on episode 247 of Transformation Ground Control.
Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in dark, walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed.
I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent, technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Feeling good, like I should. When in dark, walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed. Got that sunshine on my soul.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 247. My name is Eric Kimberling. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And the show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent tech agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And if you'd like to learn more about how our team can help you through your transformation journey, feel free to reach out to me. I've included my information below. Be happy to chat with you about our services, what we provide, how we can help you through your transformation. I'd even offer up our team to provide a free assessment of your project and your plan so far and where you're at, and give you some feedback that might help you get started or pivot or just validate your thinking as you go through your project. So reach out to me if you'd like to take us up on that. And in the meantime, we're going to bring on our first guest, Sanjay, who is the CEO of QAD Software. And QAD Software, I'll let him describe the company a bit more, but QAD Software is a technology that focuses on manufacturing technology. So we thought we'd talk to him about the future of manufacturing technology and how ERP is evolving within the manufacturing tech space. So with that all being said, Sanjay, thank you for being here today.
Well, Eric, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And don't worry, I mean, it's a very unusual last name. But you got it right the second time. Brahmawar is perfectly fine. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So thank you again for being here. This is the first time that we've had this formal podcast conversation. You and I have spoken a number of times in the past, but never in this exact format. But a lot of people may not know who you are. A lot of people may not know who QAD is. Tell us a little bit about yourself, because you are relatively new in the CEO role at QAD. QAD has been around for a long time, but it's sort of pivoting on its strategy and product roadmap. So tell us a little bit about you, and then I want to ask you a little bit about QAD, and then we'll get into some of the general manufacturing tech questions I've got for you.
Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity. Well, listen, it's almost about 6 months since I joined QAD in March. And so relatively still in some ways new, but it's been fantastic, very exciting. I've managed to meet the entire company and got out on the road, met more than 75 customers. So really hearing from our clients. Now, prior to QAD, I was the CEO of another software company, Software AG, integration and database technology company. And I was the CEO there for 6.5 years. And I took that company through quite a major transformation from a company that had a lot of heritage and history, being born in 1969, but took that and modernized the product portfolio, changed the business model to subscription SaaS, and then took the company back to growth. So that was kind of prior to QAD. And then before Software AG, I was at IBM for about 16 years. And I tell you, through that entire period, my focus has been manufacturing, industrial sector. I really engaged with, aerospace, automotive, oil and gas, discrete manufacturing. So manufacturing is where my heart is. In fact, at the age of 21, I literally started my career on the shop floor in Honda, kind of really understanding how to assemble engines and really learning what it takes to run a plant. And, it's not always a perfect plan that does things. It's, it's how you react and how you respond and how you execute. So that's kind of a little bit. And on a personal front, I'm married. I've got two boys, 19 and 16.
Yeah, great. Well, great to have you here. And it sounds like you've been brought in. This isn't the first time you've been brought in to change a business model or pivot on the direction that a software company is going. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about, maybe for those that don't know QAD or don't know it well, tell us about the history of QAD and what you're doing. That's really, it's pretty interesting what you're doing right now. Really exciting to see. But tell us a little bit about the evolution of where QAD was and its history and where you're taking it now.
Yeah. I have to say, look, it was my love for manufacturing that attracted me to QAD when I was approached. And I have to say, QAD's got an amazing history. We're born in the 70s and just born from a perspective that at that time, most ERPs were very horizontal, thinking about, mostly around the processes across the organization, but none of them were really focused on manufacturing, focused on the bill of material, really think about how you bring goods in, how you manufacture goods, how you ship them out. And so that's how QAD was born. It was born with that focus, that maniacal attention to how do you really serve the manufacturing community and how do you help them produce effectively, produce efficiently, have goods manufactured and delivered in time. So that is those are the roots of Q80. And the first kind of, let's say, vertical that Q80 focused on was automotive. So literally, almost every tier 1, tier 2 automotive supplier that you can think about, has Q80 in some form or shape. And so we are very, very dominant in the automotive space. And then from there, Q80 obviously diversified into certain other verticals like discrete manufacturing, food and beverage, life sciences, high tech, etc. And so that's kind of sort of the roots and the origins. And over a period of time, we have acquired more capabilities to be able to serve our clients across different dimensions. And in one of our recent acquisition a couple of years ago has been RedZone. RedZone is the world's #1 connected workforce system, which basically really, translates collaboration and information sharing with the frontline worker into real productivity, real compliance, real learning on the shop floor. So it's really empowering the frontline worker. And so the combination of that, along with the adaptive ERP that we have, that's a very strong combination to serve clients. So that's kind of sort of the history. And I guess where I come in is to be able to take that great heritage and that great history, that domain expertise, and now help manufacturers where we have like once in a lifetime opportunity to be able to really drive manufacturing into the age of agentic AI, into the age of systems of actions rather than systems of record. So that's what we are doing with Q80. We are pretty much moving manufacturing from a systems of record to a systems of action. And my vision is that where every frontline worker, every machine, and every decision drives outcome. And just to kind of close it, we have 3 pillars in our manufacturing platform. The first pillar is RedZone, that empowers the frontline workforce, which is a connected workforce solution. The second pillar is adaptive. These are ERP, which is basically the intelligent digital backbone. And then the third pillar is what we are introducing now, which is called Champion AI, and that is agentic AI that amplifies the human potential. So this together, these 3 pillars, they form our manufacturing platform, and that's where we are taking Q80 to be able to support our clients.
It's interesting because I didn't hear the word ERP. So where does ERP fit in this roadmap, or how does it fit in the overall roadmap for Q80?
Yeah, so I mean the second pillar actually is what we call adaptive, which is our ERP. So this is basically the manufacturing ERP. But the big change that we see happening, Eric, is we want to kind of create a much more engaging system for our clients, for the manufacturing users, so that is more a system of action rather than one where you are going through multiple UI screens to be able to do these several transactions, and it's kind of more like a systems of record. So the Champion AI basically offers this agentic layer, and it allows our users to be able to interact with the ERP through agents and through agents that would do some simple, basic, mundane tasks in the system for them, agents that would help them solve very complicated issues like inventory, carrying cost optimization, or agents that would help them implement the system much faster. So that is kind of the way we have tied the 3 together, RedZone, adaptive, the ERP, and Champion AI, the agentic layer.
Yeah. So when you talk about adaptive ERP and adaptive applications in general, what does adaptability mean in terms of manufacturers that are always going through change? They've got tariff issues for those that are based in North America, supply chain disruptions, geopolitics and wars, and things that create difficulty managing a supply chain and manufacturing shop. So what does that mean? What does adaptability mean in your view?
Yeah, I think you pointed out very very rightly. The entire manufacturing community, they're experiencing a tremendous amount of change. You think about all the geopolitical changes, the tariffs, the many other supply chain challenges or shifts in the supply chains. Those are, kind of factors that are not in the control of the manufacturers. And so therefore, adaptive systems or adaptive applications are ones that can sense, learn, and respond at pace. So it shouldn't take months and years to implement changes. It should be systems should be able to respond in hours instead of weeks. Should be able to make the changes that are needed in that system to be able to deal with changing parameters or changing inbound conditions. And that is exactly how we are delivering adaptive, to be able to, first of all, make changes very quickly. And what we have built is a methodology to deploy an adaptive implementation in 90 days. That's a greenfield situation. But even in a brownfield situation, we can do that in a matter of months rather than what it normally takes years to deploy. So that is what we mean by adaptive.
Gotcha. Yeah, very interesting. And it's interesting how your strategy is so focused on not only some emerging tech trends in general, like the adaptability, the obviously the AI piece of it, but you're very much focused on manufacturing. And I know that's your personal passion as well as QAD's. The QAD, as you mentioned, has a pretty rich history of doing manufacturing types of technologies. Quick question for the audience. I'd love to hear from the audience what trend in the manufacturing tech space you're most excited about, or you think is the most high value for the time, at least in the short term. I think longer term is a little bit harder to predict, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that. And before I get into these other questions, Sanjay, just a real quick plug for an event you guys are hosting. So QAD is hosting this event. I'm going to put up a QR code here. This is Champions of Manufacturing. It's a series of events that you're hosting throughout the world. You mentioned before we went live that you were just finished up one of these Champions of Manufacturing conferences in Europe, and now you've got one coming up in Dallas in the southern United States in November, what is it, 12th and 13th, I believe it is, or 13th and 14th?
Correct.
Mid-November. So, but if you scan this QR code, it'll give you the exact dates and the registration and everything. Tell us a little bit about this conference and what kind of stuff, what kind of content are you guys covering in this event?
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you very much for introducing that, Eric. We just completed our Champions of Manufacturing in Brussels. And when we were thinking about what is the current challenge that manufacturers are facing, you talked about some of these macro things, but, I really think about it like it's a once in a lifetime change, or it's almost like a watershed moment that manufacturing is facing. There's a lot of investment coming into manufacturing. It's almost 2 to 3 trillion if you look at the US market itself. So there's a lot of attention. Governments are considering manufacturing to be very critical, both from a security point of view, but also from a national economy point of view. And so while there's a lot of this investment that's coming in, the challenge, of course, is that there is a gap between the opportunity and the capacity. There's almost 500,000 open jobs in manufacturing in the U.S. today. This could be almost 2 million by 2030. So the paradox is actually, while capacity is, or let's say, while funding or money is flowing in, capacity is lacking. So it's ambition and execution, the gap is widening. Now, we believe that manufacturers actually have 3 choices really. One is they could retrain and reskill their current worker, or let's say their current employees. Bit challenging because it takes time. Of course, it's very essential, but then also 30% of the workforce is above the age of 50. So also this is not an easy task. The second thing is you could deploy more robotics, capital intensive, but also quite rigid. And then the third thing is you can bring in the leverage of AI and agentic capabilities to be able to create more productivity, more efficiency out of your existing systems and the people. And that is where we are focused. And so when we thought about that, we said that is the theme that we want to take forward. And we want to bring these capabilities to be able to make the manufacturers champions. And hence came the word Champions of Manufacturing. So at this event, and we just did this in Brussels as the first run, we are bringing together, the industry challenge, the 3, topics that are talked about. How do you address that productivity gap? What are the, specific activities that would be supporting our manufacturers? How does the manufacturing platform, the new, the 3-pillar platform that we talked about, support our clients? And then, we've got some real life examples and demos to be able to show these new capabilities to our clients. We have some existing clients who've been using the manufacturing platform, and they talk about their experiences of using Champion AI, using Red Zone, and Adaptive. And so that's kind of all the things that we are bringing to the Champions of Manufacturing. And for Dallas, the other thing that we have is we have quite a lot of industry experts coming and joining us, and they are on stage talking about what are the real developments in. So we have people from kind of industry experts as well as tech experts who will share their views with our clients.
Nice, very cool. Yeah, so yeah, scan the QR code here, and we'll also drop a link in the chat below, in case you don't want to scan that, or if you want to refer to it later as well. But you can scan that there, see the agenda, see some of the speakers that are going to be there. I'm going to be there, so I'm looking forward to seeing you and your team there as well. So it promises to be a good event. Here's a question from Brian on LinkedIn. Brian says, can you talk about the importance of PLM? So PLM is product lifecycle management, and MES, manufacturing execution systems, in complementing the traditional ERP scope. How are you guys viewing that, and how do you think those two important pieces of manufacturing are coming together with ERP systems?
Absolutely. I think great question, Brian. I mean, the way we have been thinking about it is in an open system that actually engages with the ecosystem that our manufacturers have. It is not, we know that it's not a situation where our clients and the manufacturers have only QAD or only one system. They have a sort of a landscape of different systems that they use. So they have a PLM, they have an MES, they have an ERP, they could have a connected workforce solution. The way we've designed Champion AI is that layer, that agentic layer, is able to interact openly with any system that our clients are using. So, for example, it will interact with PLM to get data that is associated with product or with the design or with the existing capabilities. It will interact with MES and pull data out that would be able to be presented to the worker on the shop floor at the point where the work is being done. The old way of thinking of this was tons of reports and views that were created and were then provided to a supervisor, who then had to have a discussion with the worker on the particular point where the problem might have occurred. So it could be like a couple of weeks go by the time a root cause analysis gets done and you actually understand what the issue is. Now with Red Zone, you're pulling in all the information from your ERP, from your MES, from your PLM, etc. You're bringing that information in a very cogent way to your frontline worker on an iPad or an Android device. And there and then the problem can be addressed and can be looked into. So, we're flipping it over from like system of record to a system of action, and thereby kind of creating that pace of resolution and action within. So the role that, the way we look at it is, these systems are all essential. They need to talk to each other, and the integration needs to be seamless. That should not be a constraint, and that's the way we've designed Champion AI.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, it's interesting to see how ERP in general seems to be evolving from that system of record to more of what you call system of action. Of course, the AI components, the integration of multiple systems. I think that's the reality of where a lot of organizations are going, is that composable ERP route, which is kind of falls right in the line of what you guys are focused on. So another follow-up question here then for you, Sanjay, is how about, you talked a little bit about Red Zone and that acquisition you guys made a couple of years ago, which brings up the question of frontline workers. How do the tools that software vendors like yourselves provide, how do they bridge the gap between workers and productivity and then just the broader enterprise performance?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think Red Zone is really special. I think Red Zone is where the systems and the working of the frontline workers, that performance and information that comes together. And it's a capability that takes collaboration and turns that into real productivity impact, or let's say real productivity gains. And so Red Zone effectively covers four areas. It covers productivity, it covers compliance, it covers reliability, and then very importantly, learning. And so with these four capabilities, you're able to create turn the shop floor literally into a continuous learning environment, and an environment where we're really empowering the frontline worker to be able to do a lot more and make a lot more decisions without having the necessity to go through many loops. And so that's the way we feel that it is very kind of very beneficial to be able to take all that data and all that information that resides in an ERP or an MES or other systems, but make that visible and actionable by the frontline workers, whether it's in the form of an OEE or it's in the form of a schedule that they have to follow, or it's a downtime and a changeover that they have to do. Everything is like literally served to the worker to enable them, frontline worker, to be able to enable them to be more effective and productive. So that's kind of our way of serving. Now, Red Zone is deployed in over 1,700 plants across the U.S. It's going to be more than 2,000 by the beginning of next year. And, we have more than 650,000, frontline workers who are using Red Zone daily to make decisions, to prioritize. We ran something like 6 million production runs, and we benchmark them every year. And we have recorded 26% productivity increase on average, 81% more employee engagement on average, and 35% lesser employee churn or employee attrition. So these gains are so significant, and it just goes to show that kind of thinking system of action, that kind of engagement with your employee on the front line is so crucial and beneficial.
Yeah. Now, what about a lot of what you're alluding to here suggests different tools to perform different activities, and that's the key tenets of composable ERP or best of breed, whatever you want to call it. How do you balance that need for innovation and flexibility that a composable ERP model or a best of breed model enables without creating too much technical complexity and too much of a technical sprawl, with having to manage too many systems or too many sources of truth or data sources, whatever the case may be? How do you see that unfolding?
Yeah, and I think, look, every company has a certain amount of investment they've done in their existing systems, whether these are systems that are recent or they are, kind of a bit more legacy. There is a certain amount of investment that's done. There's a certain amount of knowledge that exists in the organization. People are used to running with those systems. So, the case to move away from that investment and those systems to something completely new and like a 12 to 24 month of disruption to the business, there is no ROI for that. Really, there is no ROI. But there is a lot of value in taking an open layer like what we talk about, Champion AI, and being able to pull that data from these different systems that are being used today, where there is sunken investment, but making that accessible in the form of a way of action or a system of action. We believe that is a high value and a fast speed to value kind of way to serve our manufacturers. So our attention is not to go in and we don't believe manufacturers need more tools. We believe they need better outcomes. And the way to deliver the outcomes is through a very thin, simple Champion AI layer, being able to pull information and data from where it exists today, not having to completely revamp that, but then being able to serve that to your frontline workers or to every employee in a much more efficient way.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, things have changed so much to where integration and multiple systems isn't quite as overwhelming or complex as it was 20 years ago. So now you've got more opportunities and more flexibility and more of a modular approach to your enterprise tech strategy.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard a lot of what you say, Eric, but I think companies are really thinking about this. What is the value that they get to expose their organizations to a 12 to 24 month disruption by just changing the tech, and not getting so much real business value out of it, but just, it's tech for the sake of modernizing the tech, but actually it's not really delivering any real immediate differentiation or advantage to them that they can actually win more in the market Nothing, none of that. So where is the business case? And I think that is what I think most business leaders are questioning today.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get to some more audience questions and comments here. This is, I want to say hello to Mina on LinkedIn, who says hello. Thank you for being here today, Mina. Let's see. Here's a comment from Mike on LinkedIn. Mike says QAD's focus on the CIO to push these pillars through the enterprise is so critical to building the right data foundation. So Mike is a believer. He's a believer in what you're saying here so far, Sanjay. And then here's a question from Brian on LinkedIn. Brian says, thanks, Sanjay. Given your history at IBM and Software AG, why do you think companies remain reluctant to invest in integration and process orchestration platforms?
Brian, great question. And I spent many years at Software AG really talking about integration to my clients and helping clients think through why integration is so critical. And the way we used to talk about it was very simple, is that, look, all organizations have applications that address the processes that they use in their organizations. But the fact is that these applications are no good without the right kind of data and being able to serve these applications with the right kind of information. And that only comes from different sources. No application has all the data that it needs to be able to effectively perform the activities that it is designed to support. So you need to be able to pull the data from different sources at the right time, at the right speed, and being able to serve the outputs. And that is what I call, integration as the glue. It's basically the layer that allows you to seamlessly move this data between your different, whether it is from an application or data warehouse to a cloud data warehouse, to then serve it into an like a analytics application, whatever be the way and mechanism in which we are serving insights to our clients. Everything is served through making sure that integration is seamless. So when integration works, you don't realize, but when it doesn't work, you can see the complexity come through. And most organizations don't realize how much effort is going behind the scene to hide that complexity. So that's the way, I was having conversations with very large clients, who were running billions of transactions through our integration platform, helping them think through how critical integration is to be able to really serve those business outcomes.
I'm here with Sanjay from QAD Software talking about the future of manufacturing tech. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
How can you see into my eyes like open doors?
I'm excited to announce the release of our 2025 Digital Transformation Report. It's available now on the Third Stage Consulting website, www.thirdstage-consulting.com. This report gives you an unbiased, technology-agnostic insight to help you optimize your organization's projects for success. Get your copy today using the QR code in front of me or on our website.
I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we published. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management, or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 247. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent tech-agnostic consulting provider that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com, and the show is produced by Major Tom Productions. If you'd like to learn more about how to collaborate with us, feel free to reach out via the contact information I've included below. So we're here in the midst of a conversation with Sanjay from QAD Software talking about the future of manufacturing technology and ERP systems. Follow-up comment and question. Not all manufacturers looking to implement an ERP have capable, predictable processes. When you have a customer with a lot of variance in their manufacturing processes, what advice do you have so that they have a successful implementation at go live?
Absolutely. This is exactly the thinking that we have as we design Champion Pace. Champion Pace is our 90-day implementation methodology for a mid-sized manufacturing plant. And the whole objective is it should not take more than 90 days to implement 80 to 85% of the core processes in manufacturing. Should be able to deploy a plant, should be able to get the plant to do the activities that they need to. But the whole thinking is where the plant has to be flexible, adaptive, and respond with pace. Because of the changes that are happening and the manufacturers having to respond to those changes at this kind of speed to maintain their profitability, to be able to ensure the production capacity, the systems have to be able to change very fast. It cannot be a process where it takes months to do a scoping and a design and a change of particular functionality. So the way we see adaptive and our ERP supported by Champion AI Agentic Layer is those changes can be incorporated into the system or into the agentic layer at pace. And I think for me, that is the main thing that manufacturers have to think about. Are they going to be bound by the rigidity of their existing legacy systems, or are they going to invest in certain smart layers? Example, our Champion AI, where the legacy is there and they don't have to change everything, but they can pull the data out and be able to respond much faster and change things much faster.
Gotcha. Yeah, very, very good stuff. So when you look at the crowded technology landscape, especially you just mentioned the mid-market manufacturing companies, and it sounds like you've tailored a lot of your solution offering for the mid-market manufacturing space. Good news, bad news. The good news is there's a lot of manufacturers out there that need help with their technology initiatives. The bad news is there's also a lot of technological options and vendors out there that are providing different types of solutions for manufacturers. So what do you guys see as your differentiation, long-term edge, and how might that translate into what a manufacturer should be thinking about as they try to figure out which vendors are going to be the best fit for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very valid question, right? I mean, there are a lot of let's say there are a lot of experts out there, a lot of software companies that are offering solutions. I think from my perspective, I see QAD's advantage or differentiation as our focus. We are 100% manufacturing focused. We're not a horizontal ERP. We're not a vendor trying to fit every industry. We have chosen the spaces where we are deep, and we want to make sure that we support our clients with very deep and highly focused manufacturing understanding. So what does that mean effectively? That means that we really understand what are the different requirements in their industry, what are the different regulations, how do they have to run their processes, how do they do their operations. We have specific experts hired in our company that are actually speak exactly the same language. In fact, they're hired from most of our clients to be able to really understand their operations in depth. So that is and I believe that is a very core differentiation of QAD. And the second thing is, I think, our thinking around this converting from a systems of record to a systems of action with our manufacturing platform, which is Red Zone, empowering the front line, adaptive as the intelligent backbone, and Champion AI as amplifying the human potential. I think that is also very unique in terms of the way we see how we bring the power to the front line in manufacturing. So I think those two, that focus and that manufacturing platform supporting our what I would call ideal customer profile is our differentiation.
Yeah, very interesting. And there are a lot of vertically focused vendors, as you mentioned, that have some manufacturing capabilities. But when you get deep into it, especially if you're a complex manufacturer or engineer to order, it seems as though that focus is really important, because if you just can't be everything to everyone. So if you're going deep in one area, like a complex manufacturing environment, that's probably going to serve a manufacturing client a lot better in many cases.
Absolutely.
One thing I wanted to come back to, I glossed over this, or I didn't get to this question that I had about AI. I know we were talking quite a bit about AI a few minutes ago, but when I think of AI, especially in manufacturing, and we're seeing this with a lot of our manufacturing clients when we compare them to our non-manufacturing clients, because manufacturers at their heart are, and this is a broad generalization, but they're pretty gritty, they're hands-on, blue collar. They like to build stuff. They aren't technologists, generally speaking. They're not technologists. They're not super into, all these buzzwords and things like that. But so when you introduce something like AI in that sort of environment, how do you blend, or how do you see AI coming together with human oversight and that transparency and trust of AI? How do you see that coming together so far? I know we're early in the journey I know you said a lot of clients are already starting to use these tools, but relatively speaking, they're still early in the adoption phase. But what early signs are you seeing as it relates to that?
I think this is such a great question. And the reason is that, honestly, Eric, there is so much of noise out there. There is, so much of, the AI word is like every sentence is beginning or ending with the AI word. So I think it is quite confusing for our manufacturing clients that basically want to, produce things, make things, and they want to make them more. They want to make them more efficiently. They want to make them with higher quality. They want to make sure that they are delivering things in time. They are meeting the requirements of their clients. And so that's where their attention and focus is. They are not so, they're not spending hours and hours reading up all the buzzwords and all the technical differentiations between the different versions and, the applications and uses of AI. So I think what is absolutely essential when, particularly what we are practicing is, as we're having conversations with our manufacturing clients, is this is a show me, not a tell me. Okay, very simple. I have told my entire team, I said, we are not going to talk to our client about agentic AI and agents and this and that. No, we are just going to show our client how it works. These are manufacturing people. They want to see tangible, very clear, this is what it does, this is what it gives out, this is the difference, that was what it was doing in the past, this is what it's going to do in the future, that's how it helps you. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense, right? So that is how manufacturing people think in very logical terms. And so that is how we need to show the capability. And so what we've done is Champion AI is broken into 3 buckets of agents. Very simple. Bucket number 1 is what we call, we are calling it productivity agents, but I would say it is basically taking almost every profile or, let's say, persona within manufacturing and building a set of agents around that persona to take the mundane out of their day-to-day. So if you have a planner who has to negotiate 5 UIs in the ERP, has to create 6 reports and pull out some data, etc., to get ready to do the plan, the schedule, the changes, an agent does that for them. In the morning, they can start working on everything that has been pulled together and make decisions, right? So it takes away the mundane. So that's bucket number 1, agents. Bucket number 2 is what we say, we're going to pick up very complex problems and we're going to solve them. Complex problems that have material impact to the profitability or the productivity of the manufacturer. So we've chosen, like an example, number 1 problem is inventory carrying costs. How do we help the manufacturer reduce inventory carrying costs? Now, if you think about the costs in a manufacturing plant, you have your cost of your machinery, you have your cost of people. Potentially the 3rd largest cost is the cost of inventory carrying. So how do you address that? With the help of an agent across the entire end-to-end, you can think and understand exactly the variables, and you can come up with recommendations to adjust the replenishment parameters and how that can reduce inventory carrying costs. And now we run it with several clients, and we can show them 15 to 20% inventory carrying cost reduction. And that's tangible, that's very clear, they can see it run on their data, and they can decide whether that helps them. And then the last bucket of agents is implementation agents. If they are deploying a new plant, let's say it's a merger and acquisition situation, they acquire a company, they've got to bring this plant very quickly into their system, they need to deploy that plant in 90 days. That's based on agentic AI deployment methodology. Or they want to migrate an existing plant onto a newer version, should not take more than a couple of months. And that's, again, implementation methodology using agents. So those are the three simple buckets, and that's how we are showing agents in action to our clients. And I believe that's the way to, kind of dispel away from all of this noise, but get down to more tangible, real outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. Do you see company, or when I say companies, I guess I'm talking now about more of the frontline employees. Do you guys and your team see people pushing back on AI because of some of the things you mentioned? There's a lot of hype and buzz around it. I think there's some AI fatigue probably. There's also the fact that, manufacturers like to build stuff. They're not as enamored by technology as maybe some other industries are, just as a generalization. And then also, I think the biggest thing that we see, and I'm curious to see if you're seeing this with manufacturers as well, is all the headline stories that a lot of mainstream media will latch onto around, big company XYZ laid off 10% of their workforce, and they're basically blaming AI or saying it's because of AI. They expect to get more savings from AI. I think a lot of times that's a cop out, or that's just more saying what they think investors want to hear. So I don't know how much is real, but I think it does create a perception with a lot of frontline employees like, oh, AI, I've heard about this, my job could be at risk, that sort of thing. Are you seeing that sort of fear in your client base yet?
I'll take the Brussels session that we did recently, where there were hundreds of clients that we had invited, both existing customers as well as prospects. And I can tell you one thing: there was a very high level of interest in Champion AI, very clearly. So I would say my takeaway from that session was, number one, definitely the manufacturing community, the experts in manufacturing, they're all very keen because they are. In some ways they are builders, so they are interested with everything that's going to help them build better, faster, cheaper, or more high quality. So they are interested in AI and what can AI do for them. Having said that, it is also a community that is very skeptical, very skeptical. So, they are very, very conscious that there's so much out there, so much noise. Is this really going to impact, or is it just going to be a lot of, kind of sort of backyard projects, taking away time and energy from their existing people? As it is, as I said, there's a severe shortage of manufacturing capacity. Yeah. So, when I finished the session in Brussels, at the end, I said clearly to the audience, I said, look, I appreciate and understand that there needs to be a level of skepticism in this room. Fully acknowledge that, and you need to, because otherwise you end up spending money, don't get an outcome. However, I also want to mention that there is a serious risk of inaction. And it's very clear there are going to be manufacturers that will take this technology today, agentic AI, and they are going to understand how it creates differentiation, creates better productivity, creates faster, more efficient, etc. And they're going to leverage it, and they're going to differentiate themselves, and they will be at an advantage. They may not get it perfect at the first shot. It might be 80%, 85%, but the way the technology is evolving, they are going to get an advantage. It's very simple. And then there will be others that will sit there and wait and want to observe and want to see. But by the time they really get to it, the gap is so wide, the people have gone forward. So I was very clear at the end of it. I said, look, there's a very serious cost of inaction. This genie's out of the bottle. There is no way this is going back. This technology is real. It's here and now. It is evolving very fast. And therefore, it's not something that you can do at a later stage. You need to understand how to leverage it to your advantage. And so that's kind of how I ended the conference. And after that, I was talking to many clients, and I think they all acknowledged that fact. They all said, yes, we do understand, Sanjay, there is a risk of inaction here.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. What about manufacturers that face, not just efficiency gains or opportunities to be more efficient, but then you look at other business benefits and areas of business value that manufacturing tech can provide, things like sustainability, traceability, compliance. How are you guys viewing your product strategy to support those sorts of benefits in addition to the efficiency gains and productivity gains that you mentioned before?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, all of those aspects are absolutely essential when manufacturers think about, how they do things. I think one of the things is, the way Red Zone is designed, the way Adaptive is designed, the way Champion AI, the way we've thought about it, everything has been thought by putting the employer, the frontline worker at the center. How do we facilitate and amplify the potential of this frontline worker? And in fact, to your point about, you mentioned the previous conversation or the previous question, is there a worry about people on the shop floor, job losses, etc.? Well, I'm telling you, every time you look at it, the facts are very clear. There's 500,000 open jobs today. We're struggling to get new talent and excite talent to come into manufacturing. So I don't think that is an issue so much in manufacturing. I think manufacturing's got the other side of an issue, which is how does manufacturing cope with the requirements that are going to happen with 2 to 3 trillion investment coming in. Now, on that, as manufacturers expand, as they run their operations, et cetera, obviously they have to be conscious about those aspects, sustainability, et cetera. And those are thoughts that are built into the way Adaptive is designed, the way Champion AI addresses, particularly on the employee engagement, the employee motivation. That is something that is just the core and the center of Red Zone, for example.
Right. Yeah, makes total sense. Here's a question from the audience. I'm going to change this question a little bit. I'm going to broaden it just to open it up a little bit more and not quite so specific. But this is from Nav on LinkedIn. Nav says, could you share examples of agentic AI tools currently being used by large enterprises running, he says, Oracle or SAP or ERP environments, but I'll just broaden that to just other, let's call it non-QAD vendors. Is QAD working with, well, let me finish this question. I'll sort of add my spin to it. But he goes on to say, many AI products may not meet enterprise-grade governance, security, and risk requirements, so I'm particularly interested in solutions that have already been validated and deployed at scale. So I guess, rather than focusing, unless you want to, you can focus on SAP and Oracle if you want, but I'm just thinking more looking at the broader manufacturing tech ecosystem, whether it's a non-QAD ERP system, or we talked about MES and PLM before. Obviously, AI is its own tool that you guys provide. How do you see... First of all, let me back up. Is QAD a product that would play nice with other non-QAD solutions? Like if I've got a legacy system that, an old version of SAP or Microsoft Dynamics or whatever, could I put in these QAD tools to better leverage those capabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the way we've designed Champion AI, Red Zone, and Adaptive. You don't need to be a QAD house to be able to leverage the capability. So, for example, Champion AI could very well work across the entire landscape of applications that you have. It can help you bring in all the data and the information and leverage the agents, the agentic layer, to be able to kind of really serve that intelligence to your employee on the front line. Number one. Number two, Red Zone, which is the connected workforce solution, is built with open APIs to every solution. It's built with APIs to SAP, to ServiceNow, to Workday, any kind of application that is being used by the manufacturers today. Our systems are open and they connect with. So that's number one, and I think that's really important in today's world, because we don't require our clients to make changes or have to reinvest or have to spend more money on their existing landscape. That is lost. I would call that is money that doesn't need to be spent. The money needs to be focused more on how do they drive real outcomes for their business. First thing. The second thing is, I think that this question is very important. Trust is non-negotiable. Not negotiable. Simple. Every recommendation or every action from Champion AI is explainable, logged, and auditable. Very simple. We call it AI with guardrails. So for example, that problem that I was talking about, inventory carrying costs. The agent, does that optimization and that simulation and comes up with recommendations to the human planner to say, if you change your replenishment levels like this, if you change your lead times by that, this is the outcome you can get. Would you like to do that? And so there is a confidence of control, and this is the balance that makes adoption sustainable at scale, number one. And I think that is, irrespective of who the provider of these capabilities is, that is non-negotiable. That has to be at the base. And I think, in fairness, all our competition are also, working on this principle. Now, you mentioned some of the big players like SAP, Oracle. I think what I see a lot is these companies have to, they're obviously public listed companies and have to, kind of please the market with all the noise around AI and all their capabilities around AI. And so there seems to be a plethora of announcement about thousands and thousands of agents. And I don't see what's the big thing about having thousands of agents. I think we need to talk about what is the real outcome? What is that specifically doing for the client? And do we have a client that is willing to stand up and attest to that outcome? And that's what I don't see, by the way, in these large companies. I don't see customers standing up and talking about great outcomes that they've achieved through all these agentic capabilities these companies are launching. And that is where we are focused. We're focused on getting our clients to speak about, things that they are achieving. I can show you umpteen number of clients that stand up and talk about the 26% productivity gains that they've had. I can talk to you about clients that talk about 81% more engagement on their front line. So that's where our attention is, and that's what I see the larger companies are not able to show you.
Yeah, and in the flip side too, just to add to that, you also look at how their pricing models work, and you're starting to see some of these vendors that say, "Hey, if we deploy tens of thousands of agents, now I can charge you for tens of thousands of agents, and I'm going to charge you more than if I only had 1,000 agents." Regardless of whether or not you're actually going to use all those agents. To your point, you're probably not. Especially not in the short term, but they can price their software differently or more favorably, I suppose, to them, the vendors, if they do that.
Yeah, you remember in the older times, Eric, software was sold, right, like perpetual licenses, and you know how much of software just sat on the shelf. Nobody ever used it, right? And so the focus has really got to be on deployment, and it has got to be on outcome, and so that's where our attention is.
I'm so glad my kids didn't hear you just say that I remember the olden times, because if they would have heard that, they would have latched onto that and maybe reminded me how old I really am. So I guess just to bring this all full circle, and while I'm asking you this question, I'm going to pop up again on the screen. Again, I'll drop it in the chat as soon as we're done here. You'll see it in the chat below. But the registration for Champions in Manufacturing, the one coming up in North America, is mid-November, here in just 2 weeks. I'll be seeing you guys in just a couple weeks, not next week, but the week after. No, I'm sorry, it's next week. The end of next week is when it is. So it's I believe it's Thursday, Friday of next week. Still time to register. You want to learn more about it, scan this QR code here in front of you, or go to the link below. But while I'm leaving that up for people to scan and just to learn more about the event, when you look ahead 3 to 5 years, what do you think is going to separate manufacturing organizations that are thriving and excelling and really leveraging technology to become more efficient, more scalable and effective? What do you think is going to separate those two organizations, the manufacturers that are super successful and the ones that aren't? What do you think is going to separate them?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Eric. And great question. I would say, look, I think this is, as I said, this is an amazing opportunity for manufacturing. It is, the future of manufacturing is being defined, or let's say redefined. And the funny thing is that the winners are not going to be the biggest manufacturers. Actually, the winners are going to be those that really move with pace, those that are very fast, adaptive, and human-centered. Those are going to be the winners in this new age. And they're the ones that are not just using data to kind of sort of report the past or just record the past. They're using data to drive action in the present. They are the ones that are empowering every worker, every machine to contribute to performance in real time. And so, that's what our Q80 manufacturing platform is built for. It's built for transforming manufacturing, as I said, from a system of record to a system of action. And we are really focused on something that does not stop learning, it does not stop improving, and does not stop growing. And I think that's what's going to differentiate, those that shape this next shape of manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. It's an exciting time to be in this space, and you've taken on this new role at a very exciting time in the enterprise tech space. So it's really cool to see a legacy company that's been around for a long time. You guys have been around for decades now, and just seeing this total shift, total evolution of the company, everything from the rebranding to the product strategy. And it sounds like you've been very busy the last 6 months, I can tell. So it's
been very exciting. And thank you so much, Eric. It's been awesome talking to you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sanjay. Great conversation. Really appreciate having you here today. And thank you to the audience for the great questions as well. We've got a lot more to cover. We're going to get into some takeaways here from that conversation. We're also going to get into how big tech providers are potentially engaging in monopolistic behavior. And there are some recent allegations of monopolistic behavior and antitrust behavior with some of these big tech providers. So we want to talk about that here in just a moment. And we're going to talk about what that means to you as a tech buyer and as a leader within a digital transformation as well. So we've got a lot more to cover. Be sure to stick around. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Met her in a club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes like Coca-Cola.
If you're about to embark on the jungle of digital transformation, check out my new book, Welcome to the Jungle. It's a book that just came out in late 2025. It's my second book, and it's a book that focuses on digital transformation failure case studies and talks about the lessons and takeaways from that. It's 300 pages packed of all the lessons and things that I've learned from having been an expert witness in lawsuits related to digital transformations, and also with our team helping clients recover some of their failed projects. I've included as many lessons as I could possibly fit into one book here. You can read this book. You can order it anywhere in the world in hard copy format, which is this format here. You can get it in paperback. You can also get it electronically as well. Scan the QR code right here or go to the links below for your copy. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So, collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 247. My name is Eric Kimberling. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. And this show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, an independent tech-agnostic consulting provider that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And not coincidentally, I am the CEO of that company. So thank you for being here today on today's podcast. We just had Sanjay on. We talked about QAD software. We talked about the future of manufacturing technology and how ERP systems are evolving. And great conversation, really enjoyed chatting with him. And I think it's a good reminder that there are so many options, not just in the manufacturing space, but in any industry you might be in. And we work a lot with manufacturing and distribution companies, but we also work in other industries too. We work with a lot of public sector and government clients. We work with nonprofits, healthcare, financial services, professional services, a lot of different organizations. And the message is the same, is that we have more options than ever, when it comes to AI, ERP, just enterprise tech in general. And the lines are blurring between what these different enterprise techs are. platforms are emerging. So now you're starting to see more integration tools. And that was a big part of what Sanjay and I talked about in terms of QAD's roadmap. Some other vendors are pursuing that as well, where they're looking at ways that they can create multiple sources or multiple directions and flexible options for customers. And I think you're seeing this big shift now away from that big one size fits all monolithic ERP model. And you're starting to see more companies like QAD and others that are creating more of a platform, more of an integration tool set, more of an AI tool set that's agnostic of enterprise tech. So the good news in all this is it creates a lot of options. The bad news is now you've got more options you've got to navigate, and most options probably aren't a good fit for you, depending on what your needs are. So just having real clarity around what direction you want to go, what your priorities are, what you're trying to accomplish, all that stuff is so critical, so important to these projects. And so I think that's all stuff to keep in mind. And I'd love to hear from you, the audience. What do you think the trend is going to be? We've talked about, and I've talked about in this podcast and in my YouTube channel and on LinkedIn. If you follow me, I talk a lot about where I think the industry is going to go, but I'd love to hear your feedback. What do you think is going to happen with composable ERP, with integration, with AI, with monolithic ERP models? What do you see happening in the next few years? I don't think any of us really know. I think I know, but I could be wrong, and we could all be wrong. Who knows? But I think getting feedback from you all will be super interesting. So I'd love to hear your feedback below. So I'm going to shift gears now and play you a clip of big tech monopolies and how that's affecting the enterprise tech space, both as enterprise tech buyers, but also as enterprise tech leaders. So I'm going to play you this clip, and we're going to come back and talk about what the implications are for you and just some of the ways you can manage the risks of these big tech giants that are getting so much power and control and influence within the enterprise tech space.
For years now, big tech companies like Google and Microsoft have been under scrutiny, especially in Europe, in the European Union, for potential antitrust and monopolization types of issues. In the early 2000s, Microsoft was accused of bundling Internet Explorer in their Windows machines. Google had monopolization allegations from the European Union as it relates to their paid advertising. And those are two big tech companies that are consumer-facing that have had to deal with antitrust allegations and have been accused of antitrust activities over the years. But for a long time, the enterprise technology space has really flown under the radar of regulators and have really been able to do whatever they want. It's been like the wild, wild west ever since I've been in this space, to where you can get away with a lot of things as a business-to-business big tech company that you would never get away with in the business-to-consumer space. However, this is starting to change here in 2025. In late 2025, as I'm filming this video, we're starting to see a couple cases emerge that suggest regulators might be finally on to these big tech companies. So what I'm going to do today is talk about three instances or three cases involving some of the big tech providers that might change the outcome of how this tech space looks, as well as some of the sales and contractual practices of these big tech companies. Now, if you'd like to learn more about other trends in the industry, including independent reviews and rankings of different technologies that you might consider for your organization, be sure to read our digital transformation report. You can find that by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. The first case of potential monopolization that is emerging in the enterprise tech space involves SAP, and more specifically, SAP in third-party maintenance. What the European Union is doing here in 2025 is they're investigating whether or not SAP is engaging in antitrust type of behavior by limiting customer options for third-party maintenance and support. Now, this is something that I have known for a long time has been an Achilles heel for SAP, in that they don't like the idea of third-party maintenance because it takes money away and revenue away from their cash cow, which is those paying for maintenance and support for legacy SAP products like ECC. This is especially important as SAP struggles to migrate more of their on-premise legacy customers onto S/4HANA, which is where the real money is for SAP. But since so many customers are resisting the idea of moving to S/4HANA, they rely heavily on that maintenance and support long term. Now, the reason the EU is investigating SAP is because they're doing things that make it difficult for customers to acquire third-party maintenance and support. First and foremost, SAP makes it contractually difficult to cancel their own maintenance and support, and they explicitly prohibit third-party maintenance and support, even though many companies we work with are still using that third-party support. So contractually, they make it very difficult for customers to go look at alternative options, which, by the way, the alternative options can be as much as 50% less than what customers might pay SAP directly. In addition, one of the other things that the EU calls out in their investigation is the fact that SAP will actually backcharge customers who decide to move back to SAP support and maintenance. So for example, a customer decides that they're going to cancel support and maintenance for a certain period of time. Maybe they go find a third-party provider, and for whatever reason they decide to go back onto SAP maintenance in the future. They'll actually backcharge for all the revenue that they lost by not having that third-party support during that gap time. So according to the EU, these are monopolistic types of antitrust practices that are illegal. And so that's part of what they're investigating now. So SAP is the first to enter the bullseye of potential regulation for some of their sales and contractual tactics in the enterprise tech space. And I'll be curious to see if more situations like this follow suit as well. Another big tech provider in the enterprise space that is now under regulatory scrutiny for potential antitrust behavior is Epic Software. And Epic Software is a big electronic medical record, or EMR, some might call it electronic health record software, that keeps track of patient information when you go to a hospital. When people type in information about you, it's typically using Epic Software or a product like Epic Software. Now, what Epic Software is doing that's really interesting, that is getting the attention in a negative way from regulators, is there's a new emerging trend in the healthcare space called ambient technology. And there's third-party ambient technology providers that provide data and analysis outside of a core EHR or electronic medical record system. Examples would be a wearable device. This is technically ambient technology because it's capturing information about my heart rate and overall health. And third-party providers are taking that information and using it as a tool to analyze health symptoms and outcomes and things of that nature. So there's a whole category within the healthcare space called ambient technologies that captures technology outside of a core central system about individual patients and their health situation. Now, the reason Epic is in trouble or potential trouble is because they're locking out or blocking out these third-party ambient providers from integrating and accessing the core Epic system. And on the surface, this may sound okay because it is a proprietary technology, Epic Software, but the problem is they have these open APIs that typically will integrate with other systems, but they're not allowing the third-party ambient providers to integrate with the core EHR. And their justification is because they're building their own ambient technologies, and if the customers would just wait, they will get that same type of technology from Epic Software. So that is a stifling competition in the space, and it's putting some of the more innovative providers that already have this ambient technology, it's putting them at a disadvantage, and that's why they're under regulatory scrutiny at the moment. And the other interesting thing about this too is not only is there regulatory scrutiny for potential antitrust and monopoly types of behavior, but you also have to ask, is that ethical to block innovation or to stifle innovation when customers and patients could potentially benefit from that technology? So that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day, and it's outside the scope of what the regulators are looking at. But for the time being, the other things I mentioned are the reasons why Epic Software is now under regulatory scrutiny for potential monopolistic behavior. Now, I've talked about how SAP and Epic Software are getting the attention of regulators for potential monopolistic types of behavior. So far, I don't know of any cases involving big system integrators, but I see a lot of behaviors from big system integrators that are very similar to what Epic and SAP are being accused of. In that, big system integrators will do their best to keep out other third parties when there's an implementation happening for an enterprise technology. For example, if a company were to go hire one of the big system integrators to implement SAP S/4HANA, those big system integrators will generally try their best to keep independent providers out, smaller providers, even independent solo consultants out of the picture because they want to own that entire project and they want to protect their cash cow. Now, I'll be honest, I used to work for one of the big system integrators, so I was on the other side of this, and I know very well what that playbook looks like and what you do politically to keep people out of the picture that are not affiliated with your system integrator. There's also a certain lack of transparency that big system integrators are known for, where customers don't fully understand or have visibility into what system integrators are doing and the value they aren't getting for the cost they're spending on an implementation. So there's a lot of similarities I see with the big system integrators, and I'll be curious to see if regulators at some point start to poke holes in the approaches that these big system integrators take, because I do think, personally speaking, that these big system integrators do stifle third-party options and they stifle creativity and innovation within the digital transformation space. And quite frankly, I think that's why there's so many failures, is because it's such an insulated industry that creates its own echo chamber of biases and lack of third-party perspectives. But I'm curious to hear from you and what you think. Do you think these big system integrators are acting in monopolistic or antitrust types of ways? I'd love to hear your comments and feedback below. So as it relates to SAP and Epic and some of the antitrust behaviors they're being accused of, we'll have to see how that plays out from a regulatory perspective. I suspect that'll take years to get resolved. But in the meantime, you have to ask yourselves, what can we do to break up a monopoly from potentially harming us as an organization? Well, first and foremost, is anything you can do to diversify and hedge your bets is going to be helpful. So if you're implementing any sort of big tech provider, just recognize that you do have options. You don't need to deploy all bells and whistles that they're providing to you or suggesting to you. In fact, it might benefit you more to work with multiple providers so you don't have all your eggs in one basket and you're not overly dependent on one vendor. And this goes for not just SAP, but any big technology provider. Same with system integrators. When you're working with a big system integrator, you want to make sure that you don't put all your eggs in that one basket and don't assume that just because it's a big brand name that they're going to be able to look out for your best interests and deliver in a way that is going to deliver the most business value, because they actually have economic interests that work against you. They're in conflict with yours. So there's a clear conflict of interest between what a system integrator is going to want versus what you're going to want as an organization. So you need to make sure you diversify where you can there as well. And then third, I would just say that when you are deploying a product like an SAP or an Oracle, you just have to recognize that you do have third-party support options and you have the leverage as the customer. They may feel like you don't. They may try to work things into the contracts that limit your options, but just be sure you look at those contracts clearly, you understand what you're getting yourself into, and that you look at all your options before you trust too much. So trust but verify would be my final parting advice. But I'm curious to hear from you. What do you think this all means for the industry? Do you think this is a trend that we'll see more of? Do you think this is just overstated? Are regulators just getting too aggressive at the moment? Love to hear your feedback and what you think about this whole regulatory focus that regulators have in the enterprise tech space right now.
So that was my YouTube video that I recently published about big tech monopolies and enterprise technology. And, the real main headline theme from that video is that enterprise tech has operated like the Wild West for a long time. And that era seems to be coming to an end. Regulators are beginning to challenge sales tactics, contractual lock-ins, and ecosystem behaviors that limit customer choice and stifle innovation. And even though these are just allegations, it's still early in the legal cycles of these allegations against some of the big tech providers. We can look to history to know that something's probably going to change. As I mentioned in the video, Google and Microsoft have gotten tangled up with the EU in the past with their potential antitrust behaviors, and they've ended up settling and changing some of their practices. And I think that's probably what we're going to see in these cases as well. And I think there's going to be more, because if Google and Microsoft were a problem in the B2C space, the consumer space years ago when the EU got involved, the fact that the EU is getting involved in B2B, I think is super fascinating, because generally speaking, B2C, anything that's consumer facing is going to get regulatory attention a lot faster than business facing. So, if you're being candid, no one's out there lobbying for all the big tech companies that are, potentially screwing other big companies. But the minute you start to influence or undermine a consumer or a large group of consumers who are voters, by the way, who are voting for these politicians that are in office, then of course you're going to get their attention a lot faster. So I think it's super fascinating that somehow this is on the radar of the EU. I'm surprised it's even on the radar, to be honest. I'm glad it is, because I think it needs to be, but I'm surprised it is because, for one, one of the big parties I talked about was SAP, and how SAP is under regulatory fire in the EU, but yet SAP is in the EU, and I think they're the most valuable company, if I remember correctly. I believe I saw that somewhere, that SAP is the most highly valued company in the EU, I believe. If not the most, it's definitely the most highly valued, or the highest valuation of any tech company. But regardless, they're huge. They're a big taxpayer. They have a lot of influence in the EU. So in some ways, I'm surprised that EU is getting involved, but I'm glad they are. I think it's much needed, and I think it's good that it brings it, at the very least, it brings us all to our attention. And at the very least, I think it'll cause SAP and other big tech providers to rethink this strategy of really disregarding customers and what customers need and focusing more on doing whatever they need to do to maximize their own profit. I'm a big fan of capitalism. I'm a capitalist myself. I started my own company. I want to maximize profit. We all want to maximize our own profit in some way. But I think there is a dark side of taking that too far. And I think that's what we've seen with SAP. So the EU regulators are probing SAP practices that make it hard or costly for customers to use third-party maintenance for ECC. And that was the big challenge there. Epic, we talked about Epic software in that video about some of the ambient tech gatekeeping, which I think is interesting because a lot of vendors do that. This isn't just an Epic problem or just an SAP problem, by the way. That's another reason why I think this is a big deal, because I don't necessarily want to pick on SAP or Epic or any one vendor in particular. I think there's a lot of blame to go around and a lot of sketchy, shady behavior in the marketplace, which is a big part of why I started this company, quite frankly, with Third Stage Consulting, is because I just got tired of seeing how vendors treat customers and the Kool-Aid drinking, the echo chambers, the blind spots that are created in the space, the lack of understanding of what it really takes to be successful in digital transformations. And I think this whole movement towards more regulatory attention in the space is just going to make people think twice about how they act. And I think that's going to be a good thing for end customers long-term for sure. System integrators, I think they might be up next, because you look at some of the big system integrators, the big four consulting firms, in many cases they try to exclude smaller consulting firms, independents. If you're not affiliated with SAP in many cases, or if you're not affiliated with Oracle and you're a big system integrator and you see that consultant in the picture, you will work hard. And I've just seen it too many times because it happens to us. I was part of doing it to other firms when I was at PwC. So I've seen both sides here. Your job as a big four consultant or a big four leader in many cases is to get rid of opposition, if you will, people that don't drink the Kool-Aid, people that aren't part of the echo chamber, people that aren't there to support vendor A, B, or C that you're partnering with. That, to me, that's antitrust, anti-competitive sort of behavior as well. And so I'd be curious to see if large system integrators, the big four consultancies, start to face some similar types of challenges as well. And that's not even getting into, the lack of transparency into the work they do for their customers and how much they charge their customers for limited accountability and results. That's a whole nother story and a whole nother thread that I could see being a regulatory problem for these big consulting firms longer term. We'll see if 2025 is the inflection point. What used to slide under the radar is now on record. I think you expect more attention on these lock-in tactics. I think vendors might rethink that strategy. You'll see some vendors that might back off it on their own because they don't want to deal with an EU investigation, but others might continue to push their luck and wait until the regulatory regime or a regulatory regime comes down on them. And I think the most important thing I can leave you with here today is that customer leverage still exists. So diversification, third-party support, composable architectures, that all counterbalances vendor and SI power before having to wait on regulators to step in to fix the problem for you. So I think as a leader, you just have to look at how much are we getting locked in to a vendor? Are we truly looking at all of our options? Are we the one dictating what technologies we do or don't use, what third-party support providers we do or don't use, what consulting firms we do or don't use? Or are you relying on following the lead of a big monopolistic firm that's doing things that are in their best interest but not yours? I think that's a big question that every leader should ask themselves as they navigate this landscape that we're in right now. So enterprise tech's closed shop is opening up. Don't wait for regulators to save you. Design the optionality now in your digital strategy. Build in an interoperability layer, diversify partners, negotiate contracts that keep your leverage intact. And the safest answer isn't always a bigger vendor. It's a more composable, governable architecture that actually puts the leverage in your court, not in the software vendor's court. So I think those are the ways you've got to think about it. And these are the tough questions we guide our clients through all the time, just to make sure that they are in control, that they have the leverage, that they see through some of the BS in the marketplace and do what's best for them as an organization. So hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what this all means, if it means anything to the enterprise tech space. Do you think this is just a passing, something they'll just pass? Or do you think that this is a sign of longer term changes and improvements to the industry. I'd love to hear your feedback. So drop it in the chat. Love to hear your feedback on that. And that does it for this episode of Transformation Ground Control. Thank you for being here today. Thank you to Sanjay for joining from QAD. Thank you to the audience questions and great engagement here in the conversation here today. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Go to transformationgroundcontrol.com. Catch up on some past episodes you might have missed. Be sure to share this with colleagues and peers that you think might enjoy the podcast. We'd love to get the word out to more people. And as always, if you'd like to learn more about how my team and I can help you with your transformation in a tech agnostic, objective way, feel free to reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. I'd be happy to chat with you, either informally, formally, however you'd like. So reach out to me. Love to chat with you. So hope you have a great week. We'll see you next week on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control. Take care. We'll see you soon.